Good day, everybody. Chris Avis here with Microsoft, and we are going to be talking a little bit about virtual hard drive configuration types, VHDs, for use with Hyper-V and Virtual PC. And specifically, we're going to talk about differencing disks, and we want to take some of the mystery about how to use those particular types of VHD files in a production environment. Now, differencing disks, these are kind of a unique configuration. It does confuse a number of people, so we want to try and clear this up some. Differencing disks rely on a parent-child relationship between two or more VHD files. We have to be careful with these because depending on where we change information, we can actually lose a lot of the data and render it unusable. So I wanted to create this video to try and clear up some of that confusion that exists with this. So, as usual, if you have any questions, get a hold of me at my blog at chrisavis.com. I'll be happy to answer any questions that I can for you. From there, you can get my phone number, you can get my email. However you need to get a hold of me, you can reach me there. All right, so let's go to our next slide here. I want to show you a little diagram that shows differencing disks and walk through this a little bit before we get into a demo. So the concept behind a differencing disk is that there is a relationship between a parent disk and one or more child disks. So kind of like in real life. So in this case, what we have is a Windows 2000 parent disk. So this is a virtual machine that was built on Windows 2000. It's been patched, it's been hotfixed, service packed, we've loaded whatever we want to it, all kinds of applications, etc. And then we've shut it down, and we will typically want to mark that as read-only to ensure that no changes take place on that drive, because that can impact the child drives. Now, we also have 5 different child drives that are attached to this, and the way we represent these is each one of these has a different version of Internet Explorer, going from 5.0 all the way up to 6.01. And what this means is that once we've built that Windows 2000 image in this case, and we've sealed it by doing it, marking it as read-only, we can then attach a child disk to that, boot it up as a virtual machine, and then we can start to make changes to that and have different software, etc. built on it. So it's kind of a base image with changes. In fact, it's very similar to what we do with snapshots on a single virtual machine. So you have a virtual machine, you build it, you snapshot it, you make changes to it, you snapshot it, you make changes to it, you snapshot it, and you can roll back and forth between the snapshot versions, and you can actually have different files, different service packs, different hotfix levels, etc. amongst those different snapshots. Now the difference, though, is that with a snapshotted virtual machine, you can only have one snapshot active at any given time. In the case of differencing disks and that parent-child relationship, we can actually have all 5 of these disks active as separate virtual machines at the same time. That's where some of this confusion comes in. So let me go ahead and jump into the demo side of this, and let's see this actually in action. So as usual, I have my production Hyper-V machine that I use at home for a lot of my demos. And in this case, I have a virtual machine called Test VM for Exam running. That's the desktop that we see here. And if we go in and look at some things, we'll just bring up Windows Update real quick. We'll also come in and look at the properties of my computer. And what we see here is that this is a Service Pack 1 based machine. And I loaded Service Pack 1, but I have not done any of the post Service Pack 1 updates to this virtual machine. Let's just do a couple of other things on this just to show that I have no tricks up my sleeve. So I am a file, and I am a file 2. And we'll take a file, put it here in this corner, one down in this corner. We'll move the recycle bin to the lower right, and then we will take and we will shut down this virtual machine. And hopefully it will only take 10, 15 or so seconds for this to take place. And then we'll go in and start to configure the child VMs, or the child virtual hard drives, that will be associated with this. Now, what's real important with this is, since this was an active virtual machine, and we are going to be marking it as read-only, so we'll go ahead and do that now. Let's go out and find, actually we can find it from here. So we will go to our computer. I know exactly where this person resides. And this is the VHD file for that particular image we were just working with. Now again, you'll typically want to mark it as read-only, so no changes take place. And once it's marked as read-only, we can't boot this image any longer anyway, so I'll just show you. If we try to reboot this image, we'll actually get an error because the boot process, we have to start reading files, and when we read files, we actually write to them and change a modified time. So there's read access, there's registry changes that take place on boot up, etc. So this VM effectively becomes unusable, and you'll typically remove it from management altogether at this point. But let's go in and look at a few settings on this before we do any more with it. This is actually our original machine was configured with 1 gig of memory. It's also dynamic memory. We have 2 virtual CPUs associated with it. We are connected to a network. And then this is the path for the VM. We'll actually go ahead and copy this to the clipboard because we will be using that for our other child machines. All right, it is off. It's not running. We've marked the VHD file for it as read-only. Let's go in and look at some of the settings here for these other VMs. I have 3 different VMs that will spin up off of this, and what we'll notice when we go in and look at these is that I'm going to configure these with different settings. 1 gig of memory, except static in this case, 1 virtual CPU, not connected to the network, and I currently have no hard drive, so I have to add one. So we'll add, select new. This starts the new virtual hard disk wizard. Select next. In this case, we'll select differencing and next. We'll give it a name. We'll just call it Diffie1. We'll put it in our test directory. That's fine for us. Select next. We now need the location of the differencing disk that's going to be used as the parent, and that's going to be the one that we copied to our clipboard from that one that's in the background here. So we'll select next. We'll click finish. Let it create this system, and we'll go ahead and click OK. Now we're going to repeat this process for our second one, but we'll notice we'll have different settings here. So in this case, static, 768 megs of memory, 2 virtual CPUs, not connected to the network. We don't have a drive, so we'll go ahead and add one. Again, we will select a differencing disk. We'll call this Diffie2. Leave it in the same test directory just for example here. We will paste in our parent drive, next, and finish. And then we'll do this with one more after we save the settings. And in fact, I tell you what I'm going to do is, just to save a little bit of time, we'll go ahead and start up these other virtual machines just to get them spun up. We'll look at the settings of our third while they're spinning up. In this case, 1 gig and dynamic memory, 1 virtual CPU, it is connected to the network, and then we'll create our virtual, we will create our virtual drive. I guess I closed it out. So let's come back in here. We will add, we will select new, create another differencing disk for this. We'll call this one Diffie3, same directory, next, paste in our parent, next, and finish. And click OK. And then we will go ahead and we will start this one up as well. So we can see here we have 1 gig of memory, 768 megs of memory, 1 gig of memory. The original one was what was it? Let's just check again. It was 1 gig dynamic, and we saw the other settings. So the point is that the parent can have whatever configuration it had. Based off that parent, we can actually create different configurations for test purposes, production runs, whatever it is that we need. And if we come in here and we'll just go ahead and connect to all 3 of these. And spin those up. All right, so test diff 1. We'll go ahead and log in. I'll have a little bit of slowness here because I'm spinning up additional machines. Oh, there's one in the background. There we go. But what we'll see here is that it will match from a basic configuration. It's going to match the previous virtual machine that we were working with, where I had the separate files on the desktop. It's going to be identical in that respect. However, the configuration with a different network configuration, different amount of memory, different network configurations, etc., that is going to change. So it's essentially building a separate box and going from there. We'll go ahead and start the login process for all of these just to kind of speed things up. I'm actually putting a little bit of extra stress on this particular Hyper-V server because I am pushing the constraints of memory, not to mention the large amount of disk I/O that I am generating. So this one is not actually quite spun up yet. So we'll see if we can get back to test diff 1. There we go. All right, so you can see here on test diff 1 the files that I created there on the desktop. I shoved the recycle bin down on the side. You'll also notice that there were some pop-ups, if you caught those, with new hardware detection that were taking place because we did change network, CPU, memory, etc. So it basically goes through the plug and play process to configure those for the new image. So that's test diff 1, test diff 2. Oh, we just caught the new image there, but you can see here again. So test diff 2, I have the files on the desktop. We'll see if test diff 3 is up and running. It looks like it is. We'll see if we can start the login process with this machine. And get to the desktop. So what I've done is I've actually saved a tremendous amount of time. I created that one base image, I patched it, I did everything I needed to do to it, but now I have 3 identical machines. Now, keep in mind, when I say identical, I mean identical to the point of the settings that we configured here in the Hyper-V Manager. However, these machines will all have the exact same machine name, the same IP address if they were configured as static, etc. So you can run into network issues, net BIOS name issues, duplicate name issues, duplicate IP issues. So if you are going to connect these to the network, you will want to go through and change names, change IPs, set them to DHCP, whatever the case is. But from there, rejoin them to a domain, work group, whatever you're going to do, and you can take it from there. But otherwise, they're identical, and they're all running off of that one parent at this point. And they're up and running. So I hope that takes some of the confusion out of the differencing disk process. If you have any questions on this, again, you can hit me up at my blog at chrisavis.com. I have some other links here as well if you're interested in cloud computing, private cloud, public cloud, and then downloading some trial versions to do some testing with yourself. As usual, have yourself a great day. We'll see you on the next screencast.